All right, so the first people who landed on the moon landed in 1969, which is over 50 years ago. And since then, only 10 more people have landed on it. So there's been a total of 12 people to the moon. But they are planning another trip in 2024, which is 3 years away. So it'll be really interesting if they're able to do that, what new technology we have and what they will be able to find. Would any of you guys like to travel to the moon if you had the opportunity? Yeah, some of you. A little scary, but it'd be cool to see. Yeah, I feel the same way, Archer. Like I'd love to go, but I'm not sure. All right, so we're gonna start. I'm gonna show you a quick video of Apollo 11, and that is the mission that landed on the moon. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were the first two to step out of the spaceship, and they were the first two people on the moon. So I'm gonna pause you guys right here. I'm gonna share my screen, and I'm gonna show you this video, and then I'll be back. All right.
Good grammar and spelling are important. But if you want to write essays that inspire,
There we go.
Get ready for things you want to know. Have you ever been on a road trip? How about a 3-day road trip? That's about how long it takes to get to the moon. 3 American astronauts began their road trip to the moon on July 16, 1969. Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Buzz Aldrin blasted off in the Apollo 11 spacecraft from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on a mission that would change the world forever. Back on Earth, 600 million people all over the globe watched this incredible expedition. Before touching down, the trio split up. Collins stayed on board Apollo 11's command module, the Columbia, where he would remain in orbit around the moon. Armstrong and Aldrin boarded the lunar module, the Eagle, an aircraft designed for 2 astronauts to land on the moon's surface. Wearing bulky spacesuits and backpacks of oxygen to breathe, Neil Armstrong stepped out, becoming the first person to walk on the moon. Shortly after, Buzz Aldrin joined his partner, launching themselves into the history books. Armstrong and Aldrin spent about 2 hours exploring and collecting samples of the moon to bring back to Earth. But before getting back on board, they left behind a few mementos: their backpacks, an American flag, a small gold pin shaped like an olive branch, and a patch from the never-launched Apollo 1 mission. All was going well until one of the astronauts accidentally knocked loose the circuit breaker that fires up the engine to get them back to the orbiting command module. Collins was their only ride home. But it was Buzz Aldrin who saved the day with a pen, pushing the breaker back in place. The spacemen re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, splashing down in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, marking the first successful human-operated spacecraft to the moon and back. Mission accomplished, and the world celebrated their safe return. Humans set foot on the moon. What planet is next?
You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
All right, so that was the first moon landing. Did you guys see that footprint that was on the moon? That is still there. Those footprints are still there because there is not wind on the moon. So the dust and stuff will not blow away. So those could stay there for millions of years unless somebody brushes it away, which is pretty cool. Hey guys, those of you who are joining. We are talking about moon exploration today. All right, so that was that. I've got a few more facts and information I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. All right. So this is about the Apollo 11 mission to the moon. This is the rocket that launched them, and it launched from Florida. Have you guys seen a rocket launch before? Anybody on TV maybe? Okay. They just had one. Awesome. They just had one this summer, and they're taking that rover to Mars, and it takes several months to get there. So hopefully we can see some footage when it lands. But it's pretty cool to watch, and I'll be posting on my Clever page when I see that there's a rocket launch. I'll put the information on there, but they're cool to watch. All right, so it takes more than 3 days. Think of how fast a rocket is going, but it still takes 3 days to get to the moon, which is our closest object in space. And it is still more than, or it's 238,855 miles from the Earth. So it's still really far away. In space, there is a lack of gravity. There's still gravity, but it's not what we have on Earth. So on Earth, if we jump up, we're going to come back down because it's holding us in place. When they're in their spacecrafts, if they're not buckled up or held down somehow, they're going to be floating around. So here are some astronauts. This is a picture from the International Space Station, and we're going to get back to this later on. And these are 2 astronauts, and you can see all this fruit just floating around because there's nothing to hold it down. And if you look around, you can see how there's straps, there's bungee cords. These things are Velcroed to the walls. Otherwise, they'd be floating around and injuring the astronauts. So everything is attached or it floats because there isn't the gravity there, which looks like a lot of fun. All right, so when a rocket launches, there are different parts of it. And when a part is no longer needed, it is kind of dropped from that rocket. So you have your launching gear, and when that's done doing its job, they get rid of it so that it's lighter weight and you're not carrying that entire rocket the whole way. So for the moon mission, they had 2 parts, and one part they detached from each other. One continued to orbit, and the other one landed on Mars. And the one that landed on Mars was called the Eagle. And it was so small that there wasn't room for seats for the 2 astronauts. There were only 2 people in there, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, but they had to stand up as they landed on the moon because there were no seats for them, which is kind of interesting. And here's what it is. And in my mind, it looks very fake. It looks like it's made out of tinfoil, but it worked. And I know it's not made out of tinfoil, but it'll be interesting to see what the new one will look like if they go back to the moon in a few years. So if you've heard the Eagle has landed, that is from the Eagle landing on the moon. All right. When they landed this lunar module on the moon, there was only 30 seconds of fuel left, which means they were almost out of gas. So if it would have taken them any longer, they could have run out of gas. So just think of how scary it could be driving down the highway, running out of gas in a car. They were in a spacecraft landing on the moon. So they timed it out pretty perfectly, which is interesting. And another cool fact is that Neil Armstrong, we all know that saying, this is this is one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But he was not supposed to say that. He was supposed to add the word a, for that's one small step for a man, but he forgot to say that word. And so it went down in history as what he said, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. It's kind of interesting. All right. Now, back to gravity. On the Earth, we jump up, we come down. On the moon, you're going to do the same thing, but the gravity is different. There's only 1/6 of the gravity on the moon. So I'm going to show you a little activity you can try out on your own after class or whenever you have time to see how far you could jump on the moon. Okay, so I'm going to spin you around so I have some room. And to do this little test, all you need is some paper. I have a whole bunch of paper. You don't need a whole bunch of paper, but it's easier to see it. So what's gonna happen? Can you guys see me over here? Yeah, okay. I have my feet at the beginning of this rug. Just find anywhere that you can jump. You don't need a lot of space. And I'm gonna put this in front of me. This is my starting point. And I'm going to jump forward. I'm not gonna run and jump. I'm not gonna leap. I'm just gonna 2-foot jump forward. So I landed right here. So I'm gonna put a piece of paper down right here. And I'm gonna fill in my gap with paper. So 1 and not even a half. So we'll just count that as 3. It's a little bit more than 3, but we'll count it as 3. So on Earth, I can jump 3 pieces of paper. Not real far, not real impressive. If I was on the moon, for every piece of paper, I would jump 6 pieces of paper because I'm gonna multiply it by 6, okay? So 6 for this one, 6 for that one, 6 for the third one. So how many is that? 6 times 3? 18. So I'm gonna put down 18 pieces of paper. And if I was on the moon jumping, this is how far I could go. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I've run out of space. Come back over here. 17, 18. Now, if I could do this on Earth, I would be a sports star. Look at this jump. Okay, I have my little piddly Earth jump, the 3 pieces of paper. And if I was on the moon, I could jump all the way to here. Pretty impressive, right? So just think if you were jumping up, it would be the same thing. So however far you could jump up 6 times farther on the moon. I think that's pretty cool. So you can try that out and see how far you could jump on the moon after class. All right, let's see. Let me go back to my screen. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple video clips of astronauts jumping around on the moon. Now they're not doing their biggest jumps that they can, but it looks so fun. They're just kind of bouncing around. So pretty cool. Looks kind of relaxing. Let's see, here's some bunny hops
Do you love boating?
in 4 seconds.
Well, Freedom Boat Club makes boating easier than
That
ever.
first
There we go.
jump is a long one. I'm having
Kind of looks like a little kid just bouncing around
Best way
outside.
for me to travel, uphill or downhill. What's that? Like this? 2-legged hop? Or seems, yeah. And on level ground, I can skip. I don't like that loping thing.
All right, and finally, I'm going to show you when they landed on the moon, they put an American flag down, and this is him saluting the flag. Oops.
Hey, John, this is perfect with the limb and the rover and you and Stone Mountain and the old flag. Come on out here and give me a salute. Big Navy salute. Off the ground, before. There we go. Good.
So you can see that it takes a lot longer for them to land than it would for us to land jumping on the Earth. And also, they are in a spacesuit that weighs almost 200 pounds. So that is extremely heavy. But on the moon, because there's less gravity, it only feels like about 30 pounds. So kind of impressive. All right, next. Chandler, do you have a question?
Have you went to the moon before?
I have not. Only 12 people from the United States have ever been to the moon. I was not one of them. It'd be kind of cool though. So Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon, but Buzz Aldrin was the first one to go to the bathroom there. They had to build a special tube inside the spacesuit to go to the bathroom. They're traveling in space. They got to go somehow, right? So they have to figure these things out so that there's no surprises. All right. And my last one is that Katherine Johnson, there's a movie Hidden Figures, if you've seen it or heard of it, about her and some other people. But she carried out all the calculations for the journey to Mars and back. She was able to do all the math behind how it would go. Nice job, Camilla. And she opened a lot of doors for Black people and women in the sciences and in NASA. So this is her. Last year, if you were with me, we were learning about her right before she passed away. She died last February. And she lived in Hampton, so right over the bridge from us, real close by. And she was called a human computer. So she was pretty impressive. All right, let me get you back here. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is this guy. Do you know who he is? Yes, Snoopy. I see some mouths moving. This is Snoopy, and he actually has a big part to do with NASA. Apollo 11 was the first moon landing. Well, Apollo 10 was kind of a practice run. And what they did was they would snoop around the moon to find a good landing spot for Apollo 11 for the astronauts to land on. And so they were snooping around. They called the lunar module Snoopy. They named it after him. And they named the command module Charlie Brown after his buddy. And ever since then, Snoopy goes into outer space. They have pictures and posters of him. He's kind of like their little mascot. They can, astronauts, when they do special things, they can earn like Snoopy pins and things like that. So Snoopy's been a big part of NASA. And there are lots of books and comics and movies with Snoopy wanting to be an astronaut. And while he is not a real animal, there have been a ton of real animals that have gone into outer space. Does anybody know of any animals who have traveled into outer space? Silas?
There was a dog from Russia that was sent on a practice run to outer space.
You are correct. And when they sent him, they had no idea how to get back to Earth. So he unfortunately did not survive that trip. Other dogs did survive the trip, but they did learn a lot from that. Silas?
There's also been like a monkey in.
Yeah.
Wasn't there like there was another kind of monkey. I think it was like a gorilla or something.
A chimpanzee maybe. There's been several different monkeys and apes that have gone into space. Anybody else know of any animals? All right. Archer, do you have a question?
I think there's been well, like cats in space.
You're right.
Because when I was, or there's been lots of animals in space before they sent these people.
You're right. They sent animals into space to test it out to see if it would be safe for humans. And now they still send animals in space to do different tests and see how things work. Chandler, is your hand up, bud?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes.
I'm pretty sure turtles went to the moon.
You are correct. Very good. All right, I'm going to show you a quick video of 10 different kinds of animals who have been into outer space, and then I'll be back with you. Silas, one more?
Okay. I wanted to share a fact. Did you know that that when they went to the moon, it took 1.5 seconds from the radio back to Earth.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
I read about it in a book. I can show you when the meetings come.
Very cool. Nice. All right, I'm going to show you this video and then I'll be right back.
What species was the first species in space? Now, you might think it's obviously humans, right? Well, technically, it's not, technically. Thanks to humans, there have been a number of different animals that have been to space and returned to tell the tale. Well, not actually tell the tale, but you know what I mean. My name is Danny Burke, and this is the top 10 animals that have been to space. Coming at number 10 now, and grouping these together, we have monkeys and apes. One of the main reasons that animals are sent to space is so that scientists can investigate the biological effects of space travel. Monkeys and apes have made good candidates for this because they are more physically similar to humans than most other animals. 32 monkeys alone have been to space, with species ranging from rhesus macaques to squirrel monkeys and pigtail monkeys. Next up at number 9 now, we have rabbits. On July 2nd, 1959, the Soviet Union launched their Soviet R-2 rocket, which reached an altitude of 132 miles. On board was Marfusa, the first rabbit to go into space. She was recovered alive with her 2 dog companions on the trip. And yes, that's a bit of a spoiler for our number 8 now, we have dogs. In the 1950s and 60s, the Soviet Union ran dozens of missions to space with dogs on board in order to see if humans could handle it. They became the preferred animal for the experiments because scientists felt dogs were well suited to endure long periods of inactivity. The Soviets also used stray dogs because they felt they would be more able to tolerate the extreme stresses of spaceflight better than most other dogs. The most famous example, of course, is Laika, the first higher life form creature from Earth to reach orbit. And that leads us to the first animals to ever reach space. At number 7, we have fruit flies. Yes, fruit flies are insects, but in case you didn't know, insects belong to the family of Animalia. God, I am starting to sound like my dad. Some fruit flies were launched into space by the US using a captured Nazi V-2 rocket on February 20th, 1947. The flies reached an altitude of 68 miles, well into what we would define as space. They were later recovered alive by parachute and went on to live a long fruit fly life, which is about 50 days. Fruit flies on a Nazi rocket. Why has this not been made into a movie yet? Coming at number 6 now, we have spiders. Spiders in Space, another great movie name. Spiders were first sent into space in the early 1970s in order to study how they build their webs in zero gravity. The study still continues as the International Space Station is no stranger to hosting the 8-legged beasties. In 2011, a pair of golden orb spiders named Gladys and Esmeralda were spinning webs on board the space station, or at least they were trying to. Golden orb spiders use gravity to orientate themselves and build their webs. Scientists have been fascinated to see how they overcome this problem in zero gravity. Perhaps humans can also learn how to construct in space without the help of gravity. Next up at number 5 now, we have cats. The first cat launched into space was called Félicité. With a name like that, you might not be surprised to learn it was launched by France. Her nickname was Astro Cat. She was a stray purchased by the French government from a pet dealer who found her on the streets. The launch used a French-sounding rocket on October 18th, 1963. She had electrodes implanted in her skin to transmit information about her condition back to mission control. Félicité reached an altitude of 100 miles before landing safely. To this day, she remains the only cat to have ever been sent to space. Meow. Coming in number 4 now, we have tortoises. Yes, they aren't known for their speed, but some tortoises have been to space and traveled at insane speeds. 2 of them were on board Zond 5, the unmanned Soviet spacecraft that launched on September 14th, 1968. Where did they go? Well, they actually went to the moon, kind of. Zond 5 did a flyby of the moon, coming within 1,210 miles of it before turning back to Earth. The tortoises survived re-entry. It was announced they had lost about 10% of their body weight, but still had a healthy appetite. However, we do not recommend moon trips as an alternative diet. Moving on to number 3 now, we have mice. During the 1950s, mice became a popular choice for the US to launch into space to test their rockets. Unfortunately, spaceflight was still in its infancy then, and many of the rockets were destroyed during the missions, taking the mice with them. It was actually the Soviet Union and their launch of Sputnik 5 in 1960 that marked the first non-fatal spaceflight for mice. That craft also carried 2 dogs, the rabbit we talked about earlier, 2 rats, 15 flasks of fruit flies, and a total of 40 mice. Why did they need that many mice? Who knows? Maybe the mice do. Coming at number 2 now, we have tardigrades. You guys may have heard me talk about these little things before on this channel. They are tiny, just 0.5 millimeter in size, but the micro animals are often referred to as the toughest on the planet, having been found living at the top of mountains, in the deepest seas, in the Antarctic, and even in mud volcanoes, whatever they are. In 2007, scientists at the European Space Agency wanted to see just how tough they really are by launching them into space on the outside of a craft with no protection. Obviously, this would kill most living things that we know of, but not tardigrades. For 10 days, they were exposed to the vacuum of space and solar radiation. When they returned to Earth, many of them went on to produce viable embryos. What's their secret? And will humans ever be able to use it themselves? Interesting thoughts. And finally, at number 1 now, guys, we have the bat. You'll notice I'm just saying the bat for this one, and that's because, as far as I know, this is the only bat to have been to space, and also the only animal that humans didn't intend to go to space. What do I mean by that? In 2009, during the launch of the Space Shuttle Discovery, a free-tailed bat was seen clinging to the fuel tank on the outside of the craft. NASA observers believed the bat would fly off as the shuttle started to launch, but to their amazement, the bat just stayed put as the rocket blasted off into space. A wildlife expert said the bat had likely broken its wing and couldn't fly away. The brave bat most likely died at some point on the way up into space, but it still completed a space launch, either dead or alive, and it didn't need a human's permission to do it. Rest in peace, brave little space rat. Rat, bat. I love space, and I'm also a big fan of animals in general.
All right, so some interesting animals. Silas, you have a question?
No, I just wanted to tell something. Lila was the dog. Laika was the dog I was talking about.
Okay, yeah, that was the dog from Russia. Very nice. And I think it was her spacesuit. It didn't say it in the video, right? That just went sold on eBay for like $18,000. Interesting, right? Archer.
I think that cat, the painting of the cat in space, I think that came after that cat that went in space.
Oh,
The
maybe.
cat, whatever it was.
Uh-huh.
I think that came after the cat because the cat went in space. I think that's why it's put in space.
Nice. Reese, is your hand up, babe? Do you have a question? No. Okay. All right. So I wonder what animals will be going to space next and what kinds of experiments they'll do, or if any animals will be on the trip to the moon. It'll be interesting to follow and find that out. Before I let you go, we are going to be learning about the International Space Station in a few weeks. You know about that, Silas?
That's the rocket launch I watched.
Oh, yeah?
When
When they went up, very cool. Because they have to bring supplies and stuff sometimes. So we're going to be learning about the International Space Station, and that was the picture of the 2 astronauts floating around with all that fruit. They live there in outer space for a long period of time, so like about 8 months at a time. So I want to know, what kinds of questions do you have about how do you blah, blah, blah in space? So if you were living in space, like, how do you brush your teeth in space? How do you eat in space? How do you sleep in space? Because you float around. So does anybody have any questions that they would like me to try to research to find that to share with you guys? Silas, you got one?
I have an answer to how do you sleep in
You
space.
do. I want you to hold on to that. And you can share it when we do it. Chandler, did you have a question? Unmute yourself, hun. Sorry.
How do you eat in space?
Okay, how do you eat? That's important. Anybody else have any things they're curious about? Like, how would you do that in outer space? We know that everything floats. That's going to affect some things, right? Chandler, you have another one?
How do you sit down in space?
Hmm. How do you sit down? Archer, you've got one?
Is there like, are you always in zero gravity, or is there like a button you can take out the zero gravity with?
Oh,
Or you're just staying zero gravity until you come back to Earth?
okay. So is there some way that they can change what the environment is inside of it? That's a great question. Any other questions or things you're wondering about? How would you do that in space?
Yeah, me too. Everybody does.
All right. I've had some other kids asking about
She made a house. But
what
then
do they
she
eat?
put
How
the
do you
hole in it.
shower? How do you wash your clothes? Because you'd be pretty stinky, right? If you couldn't wash your clothes for 8 months. How do you go to the bathroom? That's important. How do you keep germs from spreading? Because there's no doctors there, right? So you can't get sick and go to the doctor. So how do you protect yourself and stay healthy? Chandler, you have another one? Chandler? Sorry. Did you have another one, Chandler?
How are you going to if you run out of air, how are you going to get back to Earth?
Okay. Good. Anything else? All right. If you got, oh, I see a hand down there. Who is that, Silas? I just see a hand.
How do you how do you how do you never mind, I forgot.
Okay. I wonder what they do for fun. Like, what do you guys do for fun? I see some people crafting. I know people like video games. Can you do any of that stuff in outer space? Carter, do you have something?
I know one. How do you drink in space?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because if you're drinking, the water's gonna fall down slow.
Yeah. So how does that work? Carter, you want to unmute yourself? What are you wondering?
And I wonder how you gonna see the color
What color?
of the water when it falls down.
Oh, okay.
Because the water's clear. How are you gonna see the color of the water if you're in space?
Okay.
And if you're in a white space.
Okay. Interesting thoughts. All right, Carter. No. Archer.
How do people sleep? Because if it's the sun's super bright. So if the sun's facing them, how do they sleep at night?
Okay.
They know if it's daytime or nighttime.
Okay. Good thoughts. Mystery hand, Silas. Oh, you're muted.
How do you know where you are? Because when you enter the atmosphere, the spacecraft starts to burn. How do you like survive in that? And how do you like are?
Very good. All right. Well, I'm going to try to research some of this stuff for you and share it with you when we learn about the International Space Station. There's a lot of really cool information and some cool videos to see
There's a
how they
lot.
live. If you have another question or curiosity or a thought about this, send me a message on Clever and I'll try to find out, okay? And I will share it with you. All right. Well, awesome job today, guys. Thank you so much for coming. You can head out if you've got a question or comment, you can stay. But I will see you guys next time. All right. See you later.